I've been pretty privileged to see a whole bunch of teams, some pretty cool speeches along the way. The speech Brent Sutter gave to the 05 World Junior team when we left Kamloops to come to Vancouver, unbelievable, because we weren't supposed to be that good that year. I think we were ranked like 5th, and he just gave this speech that was good at doing that. Guys that bring teams together. It's a complicated thing, and you see it all the time. Like, why doesn't everybody win? Well, everyone's trying to figure out that recipe.
Welcome to the Calgary Sessions. This is episode number 145. I'm your host, Jeff Humphreys. Before we get into it, if you like this one, please share it. Or if you like any of the other ones, please share it. Today's guest, we were just blabbing for like 20 minutes. Him and I go back to like 07 at Hockey Canada. To have known this guy for this long is very interesting. He's helped me along the way. To finally get him on the show is I'm very pumped about it. So please name and who you are.
So I'm Ian Auld. I'm sports medicine physician in Calgary. I sort of wear a lot of hats. I'm one of the founders, owners of Group 23 Sport Medicine up at Winsport. I'm also the medical director for the Calgary Flames, so kind of oversee all the medical things with my partner in crime, Kent Gobelka. I'm a father of 2. I got an 18-year-old son, Evan, and a 14-year-old, soon-to-be 15-year-old daughter, Karis, and husband to Laura, who, as we were talking earlier, is the way more interesting person in the household, but that's for another day.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I think it's, so when I came up with the idea of the show, my first thing was I made this Excel doc, and I just kind of made a list of artists, entrepreneurs, and athletes who were in my world, essentially in my phone. And you were on the list. So it's like there's all these characters. And so to actually get you here and hear this, it will be really cool. Because like I said, when we met in 07, it was a fun time for me working at Hockey Canada. We meet at noon hour hockey, playing this like ridiculous thing at Father Bauer.
It was great. Yeah.
Such a cool bunch of characters. Yeah. And then over all these years, like people see me, either like water skiing, riding my bike, just doing all the things. And obviously you and the team are the kind of the force behind allowing me to move forward. This would be a really cool one for me to actually hear about it, because our good friend Kurt has told me, like, I just hear these little snippets of Doc Auld all over the place of all these things you're interested in, you touch. So to actually sit here and hear the whole thing will be really fascinating for me. So wind this thing back. Yeah. Where you grew up, how you grew up, parents, siblings, jobs, and we'll kind of wind our way to where we are today. And yeah, man, I'm pumped.
All right. Let's go way back. So born in Victoria. My parents, both Scottish, emigrated to Canada, I'd say about in 1967. They were like 23, 24. Dad's a teacher, phys ed teacher. Mom's a nurse. So they came over, moved up to Shawnigan Lake. My dad taught at a school right on the lake. Then moved down to Victoria. And so older sister, Fiona, 18 months older than me, and younger sister, Katie, Catriona, daughter's Karis, obviously. My dad's, so he was a phys ed teacher, but amazing athlete. His nickname around the Victoria was the Scottish all-rounder. So he was good at like a lot of different sports, like sports that he tried to get me into when I was young. So cricket, field hockey, soccer stuck. That was my first sport that I really loved. Field hockey, couldn't stand it because I was left-handed and you had to play right-handed. And then cricket, all my buddies were playing baseball. So I was like, no, this isn't going to happen. But my dad was an exceptional cricketer, like national level. And so he was a teacher at a private school in Victoria called Glen Lyon. And I actually went there. So
while he's still teaching.
Got the teacher's discount. So I went to the school from grade 1 to grade 9. Was it grade 8, grade 9? And so I had to call him Mr. Auld or Sir during school hours.
Amazing.
Yeah. And so, after school, basically he'd head downstairs, do a bunch of paperwork. I'd be in the gym. So I just lived sports as a kid, just ripped around in the gym. Usually there'd be about 10 kids in there for a while, and then they'd all get picked up, go home, and I'd just do whatever. I had a whole big cupboard of sports stuff. And so he arranged cross country meets and track meets, and he would get me into, some of these cross country meets before I was even eligible to run. I remember one of the first vivid memories, I think I would have been probably like grade 3, and it was a grade 4 or 5 race, and it was at Beacon Hill in Victoria, and my mom was late, 2 kids, and my dad's there organizing it. She rips in, and the race, getting out of the car, and the race just goes bolting by. She's just like, run, like just go. So I just started chasing these kids out straight out of the car. Didn't even start on the start line, and ripped through pretty much every kid, and ended up coming pretty quick and realized, I got an engine. So yeah, for me, it was a lot of cross country running, track, played baseball at a pretty high level, soccer, and then slowly sort of evolved into basketball and, golf. I played pretty much everything. I describe myself, I was never exceptional at anything, but I was pretty good at most everything. And I think I enjoyed that. I don't think it's my dad, his nickname was the Scottish all-rounder. So somehow it was ingrained in me that try and be good at lots of different things. And
you're a smart dude. How does that rub off on you? Is it genetic? Is it just like watching? Is it hearing stories? Is it like conversations with is your dad actually sitting you down and talking to you? Like it's
yeah, for us, it was a lot of modeling. I mean, our parents gave us every opportunity, right? They worked hard. They didn't have a ton of money, but they worked hard to allow us to do whatever we wanted to do. So, but it wasn't, really, there was a lot of values and things. Like my dad was a teacher, and so I kind of learned the sportsmanship and all those sorts of things. But a lot of it was modeling. Like the things that really stick with me, like I used to play with injuries that I shouldn't have played with. Now that I'm a sports med doc, like no chance I should have been doing some of the things I was doing. And I remember watching my dad play cricket. Again, it's Beacon Hill Park. We seem to go there a lot. And he tore his meniscus like early he was batting. So I don't know if you know cricket, but yeah, basically you're batting, there's 2 people and you run back forth, you try and get as many runs as you can. And he was hobbling like crazy, but he just battled through it. And and everyone there was like, and he stayed in there, and it was like, wow, it's amazing. And those things, I think they imprint on you. There's just no doubt. And that was one of the things that stuck with me is, you just play through things, like just battle, and probably ended up leaving a couple scars on me. But I mean, it was, I'd say that was most of it, but there's always going to be, there's always going to be the genetics, and there's always going to be the environment, and they're going to be in variable proportions in different individuals. And I think there was some genetic capability there. But I was surrounded by it, right? It's like my dad played sports. We went and watched him play sports. He got us into every different type of sport. And then I had great coaches growing up. I mean, all those things just influenced, but it was a positive environment. I wasn't pressured to do any of these things. I was a pretty good soccer player, played on the best rep team on Vancouver Island. We got so good, we had nobody to play on Vancouver Island. So we're going over to Vancouver every other weekend. And it just, I don't know what it was, but at one point I'm like, I don't want to play anymore. And they were like, okay, what are you going to do? Right. I wasn't playing for them. It was my choice, but, so I moved on to another sport. Right. And I always enjoyed that. And there was something about getting to the level of a sport was really freaking hard, and the gains were really difficult, that going to something different, then all of a sudden acquiring that skill quickly and really improving was probably a bit of a drug for me. Whereas there's some people that are just so good at one thing that they grind it out, because those gains they're tough. Yeah.
That last, like those last percentages, they're just
brutal.
And do you actually get there?
Exactly. And I think it takes a type of focus and mentality that you got to forego a lot of things. And I've never been real good at that. I just seem to have a little bit of an internal guidance system on when I'm moving too far into one direction and I'm starting to lose things. And, certainly family, my job, my individual sports, right? Like when one starts to push too far, I just feel the other two. So I always regress back to that. So I don't know if I ever had that mindset. So I admire the guys that, and women that can sort of push into a sport at that really high level, because it's really difficult and you have to sacrifice a ton. No doubt. Yeah.
Like you almost lose, it's not, I don't want to say selfish, but you're so focused on your own craft that a lot of things beside you kind of fall to the wayside.
Yeah. I think you do have to be selfish. And I think a lot of high-end athletes would admit that they, for them to really succeed at that high level, they have to ignore some other things, right? So there is a little bit of selfishness. And it sounds like a bad term, but it's productive for them, and it needs to happen. And I think a lot of them know it and they admit it, and everyone around them knows it, right? Doesn't mean it's easy for everyone else, but it's kind of has to happen.
Coming out of that private school, coming out of grade 9, where were you off to?
So most of my friends went to a local high school, Oak Bay. And I think it was a smaller school, so this private school that I was at, small class sizes. I mean, I think I got a lot of, my work ethic in academics there, because I was one of the dumb kids in that school, for sure. There were some real bright kids there, and I think they all really were dialed into their academics at an early age, where I really wasn't. Like, not that I wasn't trying, but I kind of made my way through. But they really reinforced how to study and so then I went to Oak Bay. And that was around the time when I was kind of losing interest in soccer. And I went to Oak Bay, and Oak Bay was known for high school basketball and high school rugby, and good, like provincial championships, like perennially in the top 5, top 10 in basketball. And I remember going to one of the Oak Bay Bays, going to a Bays game when I was in probably grade 10. And I really hadn't played any basketball, like not much, like goofed around. I think our school team had a team, but I didn't play much, and I never really practiced at all. And I watched the high school basketball team play, and I'm like, I'm going to do that. There's no doubt. And so got onto the basketball team in grade 10, and then just lived it and practiced. And that's one thing. Like, I think I had some natural ability, but like, we had a basketball hoop in our backyard, and I wasn't great with my left hand. I wanted to be a point guard. So I'd tie my right hand behind my back. I'd dribble in the rain, whatever. I'd dribble. So I worked pretty hard and got on I was the only grade 11 on the basketball team in grade 12. And we were like a top 5 team in the province. And then I was the captain of the basketball team in grade 12 and starting point guard. And had a pretty good run at it there. And then went to UVic and played junior varsity basketball there for a year.
How do you, that switch, right? We talked about it earlier, just like getting to a point with soccer. You're like, okay, I can see a ceiling, or I'm not willing to tap into that extra percentage to go there. Yeah. The basketball thing, is it a mix of work ethic, athletic ability, like natural? Is it those two things combined that let you pull that off? Because it's a pretty quick ride, right?
Yeah, it was. And I think there were a lot of other sports I played that probably gave me some parallel skill sets to help. Yeah. But like, why was I able to kind of rise a little bit like that? I think it's a little bit. I had a good engine on me. Yeah. Like I could run.
Just forever.
Yeah. Good hand-eye coordination, that sort of stuff. But I worked. There's no doubt. I was the guy who was in the gym. I was putting up shots. Like I did that stuff, the repetition. And, I was a big fan of guys like Steve Alford. I don't know if you remember who he was. Steve Alford's a college ball player. I think I want to say he's Indiana. And he would never leave the gym until he shot one from the corner and the net rippled and stuck. This is when the nets were a little bit more fluid. Now they don't do that. But he wanted to splash it and flip it. And so I would do stuff like that where I just wouldn't finish, and I'd just keep going. And I enjoyed it, right? Yeah. Like, there's one thing about working hard and it sucks. Like when I got into cycling, I liked training. Like I actually enjoyed the process of training, and it makes it so much easier. We've tried to kind of impart that on our kids. Like if you don't like it, it's not going to go far. That's for sure. And you're going to start to resent it. So, we tried to bring them along so they maintained a love for what they were doing and a love for the process, right? The results, they'll come, but you can't be too results driven. You got to enjoy the gains, put the little bit of work in every day. I mean, it's all these cliches, right? Like you hear them all the time, but they're true. And I think if you support the athlete in that respect, just to stay to the process, stay to what you can control. I've been in so many rooms with, the mental performance coaches for the Flames, for the Stampeders. Hockey Canada's had some brilliant mental performance coaches come in and talk to World Junior teams and stuff. And I hear the same themes over and over and over, right? But it's just convincing players that that's what you got to do.
Because it is cliche, but now that we're older and you actually, you can really think this way. Yeah. It's interesting being around these young athletes now and how they, like the high lows, like it's just like based on a result, like a moment in time result. It's just like devastating. Yeah. And when I think back to my like sport thing, there was devastation, but I feel like it's just like, everything's amplified now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know if that's the pressure that's lumped on, so especially some of these higher end kids. They're kids that are supposed to get points, and when they get to that next level, they're not getting points. Yeah. They just crater. You have to foster some resiliency because everybody's going to hit a wall, and it's not when it's not if you're going to hit the wall. It's when, and how do you deal with it? Yeah. Like have you got the mental tools to try and reframe, readjust, and then start building back towards it. And so far, like my son, we had talked a little bit, he's playing junior out in Saskatchewan. I've been so impressed with, he didn't start in the lineup for the first 3 games. And he starts spewing back stuff that I would tell him. He's like, well, I just got to keep working hard in practice and keep asking them what they want to see out of me and just keep pushing. I got to be the hardest working guy. I got to get on the ice first, leave last. Got to get in the weight room a little bit longer. I'm like, well, you don't need me anymore. You really don't. Yeah, that's exactly what you need to do. And he actually said something to the coach. He went and talked. He said, what do you need me to do? And he finished the conversation. He said, when I get in the lineup, it's going to be really hard to take me out. And I was like, you said that to the coach? He's like, yeah, it's going to be hard. Sure enough, got in the lineup and
he's in.
Started battling, and he'll probably go back and forth. But I mean, I don't know how he's resilient, but he's gotten to that point where he's, he doesn't get too high, too low. Yeah. When he gets hit with a little bit of adversity. Yeah.
Which is what's interesting you're going there. But do you think it's a combination of how he was raised between you and your wife? Do you feel like it's also experiencing things in sport from a young age and just like consistency, like feeling and experiencing things?
Yeah, I think we never sat down and talked about it, but Laura and I, we certainly share very similar values as far as what our kids should get out of sport. Yeah, and it's not to be, it's to become the best player they can be, for sure, if they love to do it. But it's a lot about all those other lessons, right? And so I think we shared those values, and our messaging to them all the time was just show up, work hard, be a great teammate, listen to the coach, be coachable, pick your teammates up when they're down, recognize, what's going on in their world, all those sorts of more, those are the pervasive things that are going to take them into the next stage of their life, right? So I think that must have influenced them for sure. Yeah. And he's definitely got my wife's demeanor, I think. Like I was a bit of a little more of a hothead, a bit of a snap show when I played. Yeah. Like I was a bit, I won't say mean, but I was close. Like I didn't like,
play for keeps.
I did not like to lose. Yeah. I hated it. So I've gotten a lot better. I go to Friday hockey now and I sit on the bench. Someone's like, what's the score? And I'm like, I really don't care. I really don't care. I'm here for exercise and not to hurt myself and maybe score a goal. But
does that like that mean thing is interesting, right? Like the for being a calm dude, as long as I've known you, but it's interesting, right? There's the calm ones are always the ones that have the switch.
Yeah.
Do you think that drive took you through high school and then into this varsity program? Like, is that the edge that also kind of helped you get there?
Yeah. Like I definitely did. Yeah, I did not like to. I don't know where that came from, because I can't say I've ever really seen that with my dad, but I had I definitely had a switch. Like I remember, so I was grade 12 in basketball, and we brought in a recruit who ended up having a good 4-5 year CIS career, really good basketball player. And he came in, I remember, I think our coach did this on purpose, like paired us up for a bunch of one-on-one stuff. And I remember he was good. Like he was better than me. Yeah. He was a better player than me. He was taller, better shot, a whole bunch of things, but I was not going to let it go easy. I remember we got into it and hacks and slashes. It reminded me, I remember first World Junior Camp I ever did. Brent Sutter, like purposefully was running this battle drill in the corner, and he kept pairing up Dion Phaneuf and Sidney Crosby. And oh my God, I was like, well, if we get out of this camp healthy, it's going to be a miracle. But you could see that Crosby was that up and coming kid, and Phaneuf was like, just not a chance, right? And they just battled. I definitely had that in me, and it lasted into some other stuff for sure. Like that was I was a good golfer when I was younger. Now that I've mellowed, I'm a better golfer than I was when I was a kid. Like although I did snap a club in a tournament this year. so there's that.
It's still like lurks in there.
It's still there. It's still there. It just takes a little longer to get to it.
Was it a charity tournament?
No, it was the club championship.
Okay, good. So there's some.
Yeah, and I. So,
do you that like that like inner fire thing? It's an interesting spot, right? Like it's a blessing and a curse. Yeah, I would say so. Like it definitely amped up my compete and my battle. But certain sports, especially golf, just doesn't work. Yeah, I could see it in sports like tennis, any of those individual sports where you really have to park the previous mistake. Yeah. You can't carry it forward, otherwise it just continues to occur. Yeah, and I used to do that in golf for sure. I would just carry it forward. Now I'm better. Like I can just say, yeah, what are you gonna do? You hit a terrible shot. So get up to the next hole and hit a good shot. It's going to be a lot more fun. So, but for some of those more physical sports, like I didn't grow up playing hockey, but I can't imagine, I would have had people coming after me for sure. Yeah. I would have been a little bit of a rat, no doubt. And even was in some of those little doctors tournaments when I played later in life. just like, I saw it. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't do that anymore. That's for sure. Now it's, recognize why we're there. But it's kind of and the reason I'm on you for this is because I'm very similar. Like I when I played, I ran like really hot. Yeah, and it gets you to a certain point. Yeah, and then you realize, and then sometimes it burns you out too, because you can't operate that level for that long. But I think what it's done for me is like give me this fire outside of sport. Yeah, and then it just and whether it's just pushing or whether it's putting me in a room with somebody that I need to. There's an edge there.
Yeah, I agree. So, when I sort of transitioned, so I had that first year university, and honestly, I was playing basketball, and I was still 17 when I started university because of late birthday. Yep. And a lot of guys on the team that I was on were, 20, 21, 22. And obviously I had 2 or 3 fake IDs. Yep. My parents are going to see this, whatever. And I was train wreck for sure in first year and went on academic probation.
Oh, you went for it?
Oh God. Yeah, I didn't know what I was doing. Like when, it was kind of just assumed, I'm going to go to university. Okay. So I went to UVic. So I was still staying at home. My sister, like she got online or not online. She would have called in, right? That's before you did it online. She called in and got my coursework. I didn't even know what I was doing. She just put them and I nearly failed out, right? And then took a year where I just worked in a grocery store and then did a little traveling. And then, especially working in the grocery store, I realized just, I saw some pretty unhappy people that were there for their second decade. And I'm like, no, this is not going to happen. And then went back, and then the switch kind of flipped that I'm going to turn it into, I'm going to get the best grades I can get. And it wasn't that I was competing with other people necessarily, but it just transferred into that. And I still did other things. Like I started running marathons and things like that. Just had to be active doing something else. But, I studied like a fiend. Like I remember organic chemistry, right? Which I'm good at memorizing things. Did I understand organic chemistry? No, I did not. But I pasted my whole bedroom walls with equations. My dad walked down when he was like, "Oh my God, like, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm just memorizing." So I'd go through tests and it'd be up on the wall. I mean, I worked hard, and I wanted to get, and that's when I started to think, okay, well, what am I going to do with this? And I knew, it's med school. You got to have pretty good grades. So I knuckled down. It was a different type of compete, but there was the same, there was the same sort of fire in it.
Yeah. Why'd your head wander to med school?
Yeah. And it's interesting because this, as we talked, like, I haven't reflected a lot on a lot of this type of, but I did over the last little bit, knowing that I was going to be here. And I remember many different times where somebody got hurt, whether it was like one time a bunch of us were out at a breakfast place and a car crashed across the corner, and I just ran over there, right? That was just what I just felt like. I wanted like the privilege to be able to help people, and I knew I didn't have the skill set for that. Yeah. So how do I get the skill set? Because every couple months I remind myself, like, what I do in my office or with the team, it's a privilege, right? It's something I've worked hard to get, and it's a privilege that people will tell me things in confidence, and I can give them advice, and it's an amazing type of sort of bond that you get, and it's for sure it's a purpose for me, and I think there was part of that, and then as I went through some of these other courses where you'd go and do taping and athletic therapy for, I realized, okay, I really want to do this, but I was pretty honest with myself. They'd come in like, well, I heard this. I have no clue. Like, I'm trying. I was completely faking it at that point, but I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I'd honestly beaten my body up pretty good. I had so many different injuries and tried to work through them. And so that I think was another little kernel in the whole sort of the whole process. And then, why sports medicine? I mean, sometimes I think my dad's a phys ed teacher. My mom's a nurse. It was like this kind of blend. I had healthcare, I had sports. Yeah. That's kind of what we did. But it was definitely something I've always just had in me, that I definitely wanted to help people somehow. That sounds very vague, but, and it's something I love to do. Like, for the most part, it doesn't feel like work.
When you kind of start redlining in the scholastic side of your world, but you're still doing like athletics, like you're doing marathons or whatever else you're doing. Is there a reason you were doing both? Like, was there a reason you kept the fitness thing like at a level?
Just, I think I go a bit stir crazy if I'm not moving. That's for sure. Yeah. I mean, even this summer I noticed, because, I used to bike a ton during the summer, and this year I just got back into golf. And then I can feel the fitness side sliding, and all of a sudden, like, hey, I gotta turn that back up. Yeah. The movement is, for me, it's mental health, right? Yeah. It's how I feel good. It resets me. Like, I used to, like, way back then when I was studying like crazy, my friends are going out, and I'm Friday night looking at calculations on the wall. It's like the ultimate nerd bird. But 10:30 would roll by, fire on my gear, I'd go for a run, go for like a 10K run, and just rip back. Chance to think, but it just resets me. Yeah. Everything just kind of calms down. It's balance, right? It's this weird internal navigation. I don't sit down and write a bunch of lists and put a bunch of buckets, although I know internally that's what I'm doing, but it just kind of guides me through life. Yep. Yeah.
When you're, I feel the same way when I'm riding in the mornings.
Yeah. I can see by your posts. Like, I follow your posts. Like, I can see where your head's at when you're out there. Yeah, like, it's great, because I know that feeling.
And it's like, to your point though, right? Instead of having lists and like a structured plan, you just work through things. Yeah. And I don't know if there's like well, for me, I'm really curious how you operate, but like, it's almost like the priorities sneak up to the top, and you start there, and then you just kind of work. You just like think about it. Maybe see something, and just kind of you almost work through these scenarios that are top of mind. Yeah, and that's it. And then when you get off the thing, when you're done running or done riding, there's no real like tangible action, but there's just a feeling of like, okay, I kind of got this.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's my layman's.
Yeah.
How do you kind of explain it?
Yeah. I would like, especially the aerobic activity. That's kind of what I like to do. Yep. Like you, like I like to get on a bike, push hard for whatever, an hour, 2, 3 sometimes. It's just a clarity of thought, I would say, for me. Like when I'm not exercising, if I'm on the road with the team, usually I try and exercise, but it's just like it's not really anxiety per se, but it's just the prioritizing of what I need to do occurs much more fluidly when I'm exercising and I have that balance. It just kind of brings me back down and I'm able just to attack things. It's just a feeling of well-being, and we all know the chemical reactions that occur with that, but it's now part of how we recover athletes from concussion. We used to say, well, you can't exercise until you have no symptoms. Now we realize, no, the exercise actually helps with neuromodulation and reconnecting and it's brain health, right? So for that, I think that would put it into, it's hard. Yeah, it's hard to put into words, I think, but there's undeniable, that's for sure.
But what I find fascinating is like talking to a dude like you that like gets it, that it gives me confidence knowing that what I'm getting is actually a thing, it's not just, it's not just kind of this vague gray idea. There's actually some value behind this thing.
100%. Yeah.
It's funny sometimes too, and you probably see this, well, I'm guessing you see it a lot more than me, but like people that are in a weird spot in their life where they're in a bit of a dip.
Yeah.
And when you ask them just like subtly, like, you exercise and you go to the gym or anything, and the amount of no's. Yeah. And it's, you kind of take for granted that this is like the go-to for my mental fitness.
Yeah. And my wife's great with that. She's in family practice and people go through whatever life stressor it is, a loss in the family, divorce, an illness, whatever it is. There's this tendency to lose self-care. Right. And self-care you've just identified is you need to eat well, drink water, sleep, and exercise. Yeah. And people fall off those. And maybe part of it's guilt. You feel like, well, why should I be doing things for myself when someone else is struggling or when I've lost and everyone's sad? Yeah. But if you don't do those things, and maybe this is another reason why I exercise consistently is I'm better for everyone else. Like I'm just able to do my job and be around my kids and, just be a better person. Right. So you can't lose those things. And that's one of the hardest hurdles to do is you start doing those things, then you'll slowly come around. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I find it all. I find the fitness piece tied to the mental aspect is all fascinating to me because I've been on this ride for like 13, 14 years when I actually started to prioritize it. Yeah. And when I think about the previous version of myself, it's like laughable of how I operated.
So when you stopped playing hockey, there was a period of time there where it was...
Dude, I was working in nightclubs.
Yeah, right. So
you go from this like...
Right. You're waking up at noon to dial it back up for a 9 o'clock start.
That's it.
And a 3 o'clock finish.
You're like...
And there might be a beverage in there.
Totally.
Yeah.
You're eating after, like, it's just like, it's nonstop. So then you lose it for a long time.
Did you still play hockey then?
I was playing in the Heritage.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But that was it, right?
Yeah,
it was pretty like half-assed.
Yeah.
And then the older you get, as everything starts slowing down, you got to give it more to like maintain a level. So I lost it for a long time. And then when it clicked, I was chasing this feeling of every winter I was feeling like these blues, like that seasonal affective disorder. I felt that. So I had this shitty like blue light on my desk and like, then I looked at myself. Well, you actually, Brad Kirkwood, Copper, the goalie coach for the women's national team.
Yeah.
TPG, Top Prospects Goaltending.
Yeah.
Him and I started working together with Corey McNabb at these hockey camps. Yeah. And Brad was a trainer and he's just like,
got you in. Yeah.
That was it. He put me on a program. Yeah. And when I looked at myself in the mirror, like when you take those like first shots of like, this is the start, I'm like, you fat fuck. That was the first time that I looked at myself. I'm like, you were fat and out of shape.
That's harsh.
And that was it.
Yeah.
And then,
there you go. Hey,
13, 14 years later.
Your internal pride just said, no, enough of this.
Yep.
Right. I can see, like, because I've looked at a lot of your posts when you're on your bike and you do a little quick thing.
Yeah.
I can see how much that gets your good vibes going. Hey?
Yeah. It's almost like the other day, 2 mornings ago, I went for a ride and the sun was just coming up and it's like pink and orange and blah, blah, blah. And I smiled for an hour.
Oh yeah. That's better. Yeah.
There's nobody out there.
Yeah.
You're doing something active and you're just like taking it all in.
Mm-hmm.
That sets the tone for the day, if not the week.
100%. Yeah. Get it done early.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So coming out of university, you obviously crushed your grades.
You got better.
Yeah.
Yeah. After the first year, it got a lot better. It couldn't have gotten worse. So yeah, and I started kind of hanging around a few people that were trying to get into med school, and you kind of play the game a little bit. So I was in kinesiology. They called it human performance, but it was basically kinesiology at UVic. Had some great professors. This one guy named Howie Wanger. He was actually the sport exercise physiologist for like the Flyers, and he was around New York Rangers when they won the cup with Messier. I mean, he was just a legend. Yeah, just a legend, and such a good guy. And he really kind of just ramped up what my self-worth. Like, he believed in me. You know, everyone needs that person. Yeah. You see it in hockey all the time where people flounder around and all of a sudden somebody's like, okay, I believe in this kid, and it takes off. Yeah. So applied to med school once after 3 years, didn't get in my first try. And then after this, so I did like an honors research project with Howie, looking at NHL hockey data and a bunch of different cool things. And then I got an NSERT grant. So I had an opportunity to go and do a master's with a grant for some research. But then I got into med school. I used to work at, my summer job was working at fishing lodges. So I was a fishing guide / deckhand. And I was
like on the boats and stuff?
Yeah. So I worked up in the Queen Charlotte Islands. So it was sport fishing. So I wasn't on a commercial fishing boat. So it was a sport fishing boat. So we'd sail ships up from Victoria up to Langara, tip of the Queen Charlotte Islands. So I spent from May to September up there for 4 seasons. Wow. But I remember I was at this one lodge called Rivers Inlet, and it had a cabin up on the bunch of cabins. Guests would fly in and stuff. And I was down on the dock, which was like a good 5-minute run back up. And I remember it was probably like July, and they radioed down. They're like, your dad's on the phone. I was like, oh, shoot. Like, what's going on? And he doesn't usually call. And it was like it was a radio. It was not like a phone call. So I had to run up there, and he's like, hey, there's a letter here from UBC. Do you want me to open it? I'm like, well, yeah, you may as well. And I remember he read it out, and he started crying. And I was like, right, this is where I'm going. That was top of the world at that point. I knew that was what I wanted to do. I was just so excited. And so finished off another couple of weeks of fishing, and then packed up out of Victoria and moved over to Vancouver and started med school there. And then, that was I never want to do it again.
It's
honestly.
Intense. Like,
it is.
Like, I don't. My sister-in-law's a doctor.
Yeah.
So I have like a loose understanding. So I'm guessing the sports thing is like equally high pressure and a long time. It's this kind of short, it's 4 years, but so it seems like a while, but when you're in it, if I look back and just look at the hours that I spent, like, honestly, sometimes we get to a library when we had like a week to study for stuff. I'd go to find some room. I'd go there at 7 a.m, and I would leave at like 8, 9 at night, like, and take breaks, obviously, and get out and walk around and do stuff. But I mean, I could never do that now. But you're in it with a group, and you made some really good friends, and you kind of moved through what you needed to do in that group. And so where I met my wife. We weren't dating at that point, but met some amazing people, and it seemed normal. Even though it's very abnormal. Yeah. The hours were crazy. And then when you started working in clerkship, I mean, it was, there were some nights where you were like out on your feet. I've never been so tired in my life. But yeah, you look back and you're like, I don't know if I could do that again.
I think it's youth, right?
Yeah.
You can do it.
Yeah.
But it was enjoyable. And then applied to, went through a lot of, as any med student does, they start saying, well, I'm going to do neurology or internal medicine, cardiology, family practice. I think it comes back to my kind of all-rounded approach to life, is that family medicine made the most sense to me. There was so many, and I had a hunch I wanted to do something MSK sport related. Wasn't sure how that was going to happen. I knew there were sport medicine docs, but that was definitely still something I was thinking about. So that's when I came to Calgary. So I came to Calgary for my family medicine residency in '99.
Is it with somebody, or like, do you have to get like do you have to get into a clinic with an existing family doc, and you kind of?
It's a program. So the way it works is, when you're in fourth year med school, you do this countrywide matching system.
Yeah.
And so you will apply to whatever programs you want. And I mean, there were some people in my class who applied to 6 plastic surgery, 4 general surgery, and 2 orthopedic programs. Interview for all of them, and then you rank what you want.
Yep.
They rank you somewhere, and then the computer puts you wherever. You're basically, here's another thing, how exercise and life. So we all had to show up to get a little envelope on a specific day at like 10 a.m. in the morning. And you walk in there. I was there a little late. So I'm like, it's raining outside and I'm not going to open it in front of people. So I put my running gear on, ran over to the hospital, walked up there, people crying, like, because they didn't get what they wanted and this and that. And I'm like, yeah, get the hell out of here. So grabbed the envelope, went for a run down to False Creek, around that area, pouring out. And I'm like, whatever, let's go. And so opened it up, and it was university. I was happy, right? It was University of Calgary is where I matched to. It's what I ranked number 1. And then, then head out here. And so what happens is I'm matched to that program with another like 60 family medicine residency applicants. And so we go through that 2-year process together. They break you up into different clinics, and then you do different rotations in different hospitals, but it's another kind of 2 years of education that's much more focused on clinical work. You do some textbook work and you get some didactic teaching lessons, but basically you're a doctor in training at that point. Yeah. And then, and real turning point though for me was I did a couple months of electives in what was a family practice / sport medicine, and Jim Thorne, who you know, right? Absolute legend. So I worked in his clinic, Eric Babbins' clinic, and his clinic up at Father David Bauer. And that would have been 2001.
Okay.
And then I finished residency, and so Laura and I were together at that point, not married. We thought, well, let's go do some rural electives. So they would just farm you out to these places, went to Fort Smith and Vulcan, Nanton, and we went all over the place. And then after that, I got a phone call from Jim Thorne, who was like, yeah, my partner's leaving, and I just can't think of anyone better that want to take over the practice. And my plan was to do, 6 months, maybe a little longer of this rural, make a little money.
Yep.
Which I hadn't done yet. And then I was going to consider going in to do another year of training in sport medicine. And Jim was, as you know, dialed in with the Stamps and Hockey Canada, the Calgary Hitmen. He's like, if you start with me, you're going to have a consult practice, a family medicine practice. So a consult practice, basically other docs are sending people to you to figure out their knees and shoulders and whatever else. And he's like, here, I'll get you hooked up with the Stamps and start doing Hitman games. I actually took over the Roughnecks in their inaugural season in 2001, and then Hockey Canada started knocking for things because of Jim.
Yep.
And I'm not the only one. He's done that for a lot of people. He's drawn a lot of really good people into sport medicine,
which is it's fascinating that of all the places you could have got like hooked into, right? And with this like loose idea of sport in the background, but it's like you end up in Calgary with Doc Thorne.
I know.
Like it's...
it's nuts. It could have been in another clinic. And right away when I worked with him, I'm like, oh, I could work with this guy. Like he's He teaches, he's not judgmental. He's got a great, just compassionate way of delivering information, great with his patients. Like, of any of the docs I've ever met, never says no. Like, even when it's like, hey, can you, he's working for the Flames. Can you cover a Hitman game for me? Sure. Yeah. Just always shows up. Right. And interestingly, so of our Group 23 sport medicine, there's 4 founders. There's Jim, and then there's 3 docs that basically got into sport medicine because of Jim. So Alex Wong and Dave Manning. And now Dave Manning and Jim work with me with the Flames, and Alex does too. And Alex works for the Stamps. I mean, he's the unifier. There's no doubt.
It's such a little moment just leads to all this. Which is
and it's good people. Is kind of what I think occurred, is that he was a good person bringing in people he trusted that had similar values. And then once we all got together, because we all sit on a board now together, right? And we all have to learn. So you talk about entrepreneurship and businesses, none of us. Dave Manning's a different animal. He's smart beyond his medicine. And Alex economically is extremely bright. But doctors notoriously are terrible business people, right? I think it may be getting better, but we weren't taught anything in med school about how to run a business. So we started from scratch with this, and we went in and we used a program called Results, and we'd go there weekly, weekends, retreats, and they taught us everything from the basics of, okay, you need a mission statement. You need, what is it going to be? What's your goal here? What's your underlying mantra of doing what you're doing? How are you going to build it up? So it was a real process.
Did you, like your segue is perfect. The idea of Group 23, and can you run through it? Like, so, cause you're, like you said, a couple of doctors doing the thing, playing at a high level, taking care of the people and doing your thing. The transition of spinning up a business. And then growing into the beast that it is right now. What is that actually, when you're in the moment noodling this idea, what's actually happening?
I would say we all thought that we could deliver primary care sport medicine in a premier elevated way. And I think we, it's not that it hasn't been done before. We didn't, but we thought in Alberta, that we could do something a little different. And, the purpose really was to deliver elite level primary care sport medicine to everybody. I get people that come into my office all the time, like 75-year-old curler or golfer is like, well, I feel a little out of place here. I'm not a world-class athlete. I'm like, no, you're why we do what we do, right? And we try and take all those things we've learned from treating elite level athletes and we translate it over, right? But just to deliver, and I think in a caring way, not dismissive, making sure we make time for people. I think we all had the same values on where we wanted to take it. And then it was, we stubbed our toes for a long time trying to figure out that we actually had to pay somebody to run the business. Do you know what I mean? We can kind of no, we can't, because we all work in the business. It's a bit unique in the sense that, the 4 of us sit on a board, are owners, founders, but our day jobs are to work in the clinic. So we don't have a lot of extra time to run the business. And that's really what has to happen. Now we've got Jacqueline Hutton, who's absolutely taken us to new levels. And we brought in a couple business advisors who, they've been very patient with us. I will say that, because I think sometimes they're just like, okay, uncle, like you need to do this, but they got us believing in, okay, this is what we need to do. And this is how this needs to proceed. And it's running, like we're 94 staff now. Like it's fairly big.
It's a monster.
And I can't claim that I'm a good business person per se. I've certainly learned a lot. But we have really good people now, and that's the key for what we do. We deliver healthcare, and it's a people-based business. And now we have really good people that have, I think, all bought into. We always talk about this at our our board meetings or when we're talking to the staff, it's like, we're here to help people, and it's something you can go home. And I tell my son this, it's like, whatever you want to do is great, but if you can go home and feel like I've done something, I've made, it's pretty good feeling, right? Like even if you have a crappy day, you probably did help some people, right?
Yeah.
And there's something, there's longevity in that for sure.
It kind of gets back to purpose.
Yeah.
Have you thought about purpose through all these different like decisions and moments of how it fits into your world?
Like my purpose?
Yeah, just like how you're like either found it.
Yeah.
You know, like when did you actually find it? When did you realize who you were and what you wanted to do?
Yeah, it probably, like, it comes back a little bit. Well, I don't know if I recognized it at the time, but I'm sure it was guiding me. Do you know what I mean? But it does come down to that when I see, when I was younger, before I even had any medical knowledge, when I would see people that needed help, I just felt like that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
You know, so and I think that is and that when we talked about, that it's, you know, for me to be in this job, you know, it is like, it's, missing the word, but you know, it's a privilege really, to be able to do what I do and to go home and feel like, I actually did make some people, you know, get that feedback and get people back to skiing and water skiing and biking and all those sorts of things. That's really why I do what I do.
It's unique
when it boils down. Yeah.
The power of the power of sport. It's been around you for, I don't know, I'll say forever.
Yeah.
Like damn near.
Yep.
Is it all the experiences you've had, you know, with your own sport and like through the teams you've been around? What is it that makes good teams special?
Oh, it's culture. And what is that? That's the big question, right? I think Hockey Canada has been, you know, I know they've had their obviously issues, but in the recent past, but their ability to create culture within teams. I mean, because I did 4 men's world championships, 6 world juniors. They had a plan for how they brought the kids together, and it was always very impressive to me, and just the team building things they did, all those sorts of things. It's obvious, and it's recognizing who you bring into your group. And that's one thing with our business early on. We were like, you know, our business advisors talked about, well, there's culture killers and then there's culture builders, right? And which one are these people? And you need to be really cognizant of those individuals that you're bringing in. Well, it's even this year with the Flames, like there's just a different energy around this group. Now I know it's 5 games in. Nobody thought we'd be 4-0-1.
Yeah.
But I'm honestly looking at the group and how they're connected. I'm not surprised, right? They got a bunch of hungry guys, got a bunch of workers, a bunch of guys that want to be there, which is huge. Like if you get people that aren't really sure they want to be here, and it pollutes the environment. So, you know, I've been pretty privileged to see a whole bunch of teams, some pretty cool speeches along the way. The speech Brent Sutter gave to the 2005 World Junior team when we left Kamloops to come to Vancouver.
No way. Like goosebumps.
Unbelievable.
Like,
Unbelievable. Right? Because we weren't supposed to be that good that year.
Yeah.
I think we were ranked like 5th. And he just gave this speech like, we're not supposed to be there, guys. And he just talked about it, and just, he was good at doing that, right? Like guys that bring teams together, right? It's a complicated thing, and you see it all the time. Like, why doesn't everybody win? Well, everyone's trying to figure out that recipe. Yeah.
Have you been able to tie like lessons, like those kind of lessons into your business? Like, is there kind of a direct connection, or is there just like loose ideas in your head when the situation comes up? You're like,
I'm more of a loose ideas guy.
Yeah.
I'm not as like I don't sit down and like write lists and stuff, but I know a lot of that stuff rolls forward for sure. But I think a lot of it, it comes down to who's part of your group and who wants to be part of your group. And that's the big thing for our business, right? Is who brings the culture up, the positivity, work for others. There's lots of different parameters to that. And there's some people that just drag it in the wrong direction. And you need to recognize that. You need to change it as quickly as you can, because we let things go, and our business people would be like, you'll get there when you get there, but I guarantee you're going to get there. And we always got there. And now I think we're a little more efficient at that. And it's not to say those people are bad people. They just don't quite fit into the system that you have. Yeah.
Because there's a vibe at Group 23.
Yeah.
When you walk in there, and
I think so.
Whatever it is, right? From the front of, I don't know how you, front of house to like the doc team to the physios, like there's a vibe in there where there's an energy of like, okay, we're here to help. Yeah.
And that vibe wasn't always there, right? It was chaos vibe at some point. But, we've now got, Kaylee and Bailey, like they have got good people up there. I think we've figured out to make sure people are set up for success, which is huge. People are overwhelmed, especially at the front desk.
Yeah.
The people see that right away and they're like, what am I doing here? Right? It's you can't escape that. But I think it's an environment where, everyone really cares about doing what's right for the patient. And we have a collaborative system in there, which was part of what our mission was as well. There's nothing like, a physio seeing, some example, a 16-year-old girl thinks tore her ACL playing soccer. It's quite acute. They're distraught. Pulling in one of the sport med docs, going, it's torn. Let's get an x-ray. And then one of the orthopedic surgeon wheels by. Do you want to have a look at this person? They come in, they're like, yep, perfect. Yeah, let's get you, talk to you about surgery. It doesn't happen every time, right? Because people are busy and sometimes schedules don't sync. But we do that quite a bit. And we do that because we have all those people within house. And we talk to each other and we use the same computer system. So that integrative form of care allows for patients to get something that sometimes lingers for months and sometimes is missed, and then they blow their knee again, and then there's things you can't fix. So I think we're changing outcomes, and we've also started looking at how can we save our healthcare system a little bit of money. So we've got this acute accelerated injury clinic where people don't need a referral, but if they were playing in their Heritage League hockey and they had a slap shot ripped off their ankle and they're like, what do I do? They call or text our number and we see them within 48 hours. We can get x-rays, unclogs the emergency rooms, right? A lot of people can't get family doctor appointments these days. So we're looking at trying to provide services that actually advance our healthcare system a little bit and allow for a little more innovation. And I think being a clinic of our size, we're a bit more nimble. Like we can pivot. We can make these clinics. We have injection clinics. We've done a lot of things that, and I got to credit Dave Manning, and has been huge for that. Like his ideas, he's a juggernaut, no doubt.
How do you manage your mental fitness now? What's your go-to? Because as like you're operating at a level, right?
Yeah.
Like, got a bunch of things going on, family included. What's your approach?
Got a cold plunge. So there's that.
You did?
I did.
I
got a culture.
I just saw one come up. It starts with an S. I was like,
there's a lot of them.
Okay, so you've got a cold.
No, I'm kidding. That's not really how but I do have a cold
you got
plunge.
One?
Yeah. It's really cold. I usually will exercise every day. Yeah. So like once the winter starts, I've got a nice little spin room. I've got one of those Zwift trainers. So I race on Zwift, train on Zwift. Sometimes it's just spinning my legs, that sort of thing on the road. Started getting back into running. Actually, so I used to be a decent runner, like ran marathons sub 3 and, it's like 33, 10K runner. I was quick back in the day, but I gave it up just because the body didn't like it, and then started cycling sort of late 2008, 9. Did raced and bikes for years and thought this is easier on my body. But I actually got back a little bit into running, bought some running shoes. They've changed in the last 18 years. They're like running on pogo sticks.
I was going to say they got some spring to them.
It's unbelievable. I was like, this is like cheating. My body feels a little bit better. But I'm always going to be somebody who's going to move somehow. If it's a spin on a bike, if it's, I sometimes rent a bike when I'm on the road. Some great services. They'll bring it to the hotel room in San Jose. You can get up into the hills there pretty quick.
Cool way to see all these cities too,
Oh,
right?
Unbelievable. It's the best way. Like think about the places in Calgary when you're ripping around that you would never have seen, right? That you're now getting into, and just little neighborhoods and dirt paths and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So I did some mountain biking in Vegas once, 20-minute Uber, and you're out in the hills. So I'll throw some of that stuff in when I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like it is a priority.
Oh,
like a non-negotiable priority.
Non-negotiable. Yeah. Yeah. And not to the point where I'm not going to do my job but even if it's just an hour, there's always some of that's going to happen forever.
Yeah.
It always has been there. Like, when I was, obviously as a kid, you're just moving, you're playing sports, and I've been through those little lulls where you're like, okay, med school is crazy. So I would run and train at whatever time. That's when I was doing marathons. So it's always going to be there. And it's, like I said, sometimes you get on the bike, it's like, oh man, it's a bit of a grind today, but you're always better afterwards. Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Like, just like that, when you're like ratcheting your shoe, you're just like, man, I don't know if I got this today.
Yeah, I know.
And then you go out and do the thing.
You get 10, 15, then you're like, okay,
I can do this. Yeah. And
it's happening.
And maybe it's not at the same like cadence or speed as what it normally is.
Yeah.
But whatever. Like, we're not getting scouted.
Exactly.
We're not like, there's no, it's not the result we're going after. It's like you said, it's the process.
I mean, I raced a lot for probably a decade.
And so what kind of races?
So I raced road bikes.
Yep.
So I was a Cat 1-2 road racer. I raced cyclocross.
Okay.
Right. So that sort of hybrid. A lot of people don't know. And mountain bikes. Mountain bikes was what I first started with.
So you were like way into this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I won a national title mountain biking for age group.
No way.
So 40 plus, 40 to 49.
Yep.
And won a cyclocross national championship and won a lot of mountain bike events and things like that. Like I was fully into it. I trained like 20 hours a week
as you do, right?
Yeah, 12 usually, but I got up there. And so I was solid. Like when I competed in the upper echelon of amateur racing, like the pro guys are the pro guys.
Was that just you? I love how you sneak this in, by the way. Was that just you being you? Dribbling with a hand behind your head? Like, was it just you getting into things at a level you do?
Yeah, and it started just with mountain biking with friends, and that was still probably when I was a little on the.
You're hot.
On this, yeah, I was still running a little hot there, and so there was a couple guys that were racing at the time, and they would just start drifting away, and I'm like, nah, it's not gonna happen. Like, awesome guys, still really good friends, but I'm like, no, I want to feed them, and so I just started doing more, and then I actually, one point I was really knocking on the door, and this one coach who was also a race was like, I should coach you. I'm like, all right. And then like 3 months later, I won a national title in cyclocross, and he coached me for a while. And then I took all his programs and kept doing them.
Yep.
But I loved to train. Like I loved being on my bike. And you hear that from some of the, follow some of the pro riders that they actually, it's not if it becomes a grind, or if it's a grind at the start, they don't last.
Yep.
And they probably don't produce the results, but I loved getting on my bike and I love training. I love that feeling of getting fit. Now I've lost, not all of that, but I've lost that, but I still recognize I still need to push. Like yesterday I did a Zwift race and nearly vomited off the side of my bike. Right. That's great.
Still got it.
I love it. Yeah. It always hurts, right? It doesn't matter how fit you are. You just start going faster and it always hurts.
Yeah.
But in the winter here, I'll probably sharpen that a little bit. I'm not going to golf. So
the biking thing, like when you're winning like national things, family at the time?
Yep. So they would come to races.
To fit it all in.
Yeah, I know. And that's why I drifted away from it. Is I took over the Flames job in the 2015-16 season. I raced that season and then the next season, and then I started recognizing, I'm like, this is getting tough. It's just, I didn't have balance, and I was like, I'm not, my kids are now, sons and whatever, Adam, and doing this and playing baseball, and I coached them in baseball. I want to do this. And I'm like, yeah, it's not going to work. So it started to feel like it just wasn't the right thing to do. And I think when I started losing out of those other buckets, my motivation for this one, it's not that I didn't like it anymore. It was just like, no, that's okay. The Flames job changed how I work through September to May. That's for sure. Like my phone is always close, and it's just a little bit more full gas. And so it just became more difficult. Yeah.
It's kind of not sustainable to be, because like it's an amateur thing, but you're training you're training at a very high level.
Yeah. And I always recognize that. Like it didn't, at the end of the day, it didn't really matter, right? It was a means to be able to, eat a bucket of ice cream and have a couple of beers, right? Like I was balancing that out. I earned it. Yeah. But I enjoyed the competition for sure. And I loved some of those mountain bike and cyclocross races.
Yeah.
Talk about, it's an hour long race or an hour and a half long race, and like your focus, like it would go by so fast, and your focus is so dialed for that. There's nothing like it. Or crit racing too. Terrifying, right? These circuits where you're ripping around with like 90 other guys on wet roads sometimes. I mean, it's terrifying, but the amount of, it's one of those things I go in going, oh man, dreading it, nervous, come out going, damn, that was fun. And it's that singular focus for that brief period of time that was just so singular for me. Yeah. So I love that. That was fun. Yeah.
Is golf becoming the thing that you're kind of like, channeling your energy?
A little bit, like just for some goals. So I wanted to shoot under par this year was my goal. And I shot even and close to it. And I wanted to get my handicap down as low as it's ever been. So I'm at 2.5 now. So that's lower than I ever was. Never been there. Even when I was playing 100 rounds as a kid, I was never close. And again, I think that's partly just a little more chill, actually. If you hit a bad shot, then you don't have to make up by trying to hit a 210 yard slinging one iron around a corner. It doesn't work. Just take your medicine, pop in the fairway and go. So yeah. And I played a couple tournaments, and some of them were fun with buddies, but played like a club championship, and it's crazy. Like, I get up in this tournament, I'm like, who the hell cares, right? It's the club championship with a bunch of guys. And I get on the first tee and I can barely even feel my hands.
No way.
I'm like, I might let go of this club. I don't have no idea where this ball's going. I'm so nervous. But the funny thing is, the second round, still a bit nervous. I looked at the other guys and I'm like, are you guys nervous? And they're like, yeah, it makes no sense, right? I'm like, no, it makes no sense. Let's just go have fun. And sure enough, it started to flow after that.
Do you think you need that something athletic to chase as you just in day-to-day life?
I'd say obviously I do.
Yeah.
Like if I just look historically on how my life has progressed from, doing something at a reasonably competitive level and then drifting to something else.
Yep.
And then doing that, taking that to a level and then taking that to a level. And I don't know if it says that I'm a quitter. I don't think it does, right? No. Like, cause I would stop these things and start something else. But I think it's something about, your body changes a little bit too, right? So doing competitive hockey and things like that is just not a reality anymore for me. But I enjoy the process of getting better at something. There's no doubt. And to see how good I can get at it.
Yeah.
But I gotta love it. Like I'm never gonna do it. No offense to my daughter who's a volleyball player, but volleyball just doesn't do it for me. Like I go out, I just never had any like for it. So it's gotta be something I love. Yeah.
Winding this thing back to like med school, that time when you kind of think about what you want to do to where you are right now. Could you have pictured this? Could you have pictured all these like pieces from like meeting Doc Thorne to like Group 23 being the thing to working with these high end teams to, did you have this any picture in your head?
Like back in, like if I go way back to high school, I would say I wanted to succeed, that for sure. And I think that's again ingrained from my parents. Like you can do anything you want to do, right? I wanted to do something that I saw value in for sure. But in high school, what I've imagined I would have been doing this, no. I've certainly never, like I don't have a 5-year plan. I never have. And I know that works for some people, but I think it's allowed me to probably turn corners a little bit more without any preconceived, no, you shouldn't be doing that. Your plan is here. But, there's always internal guiding principles, which are the things we've talked about. It's like, well, what's my purpose? What do I feel good doing? What brings value to others? Like, what do I enjoy? Right? Nobody's be great at their job if they don't enjoy it. It certainly started to shift a little when I got into the kinesiology realm, because it was, studying movement of sport, biomechanics, exercise physiology, anatomy, physiology, all those things. I'm like, oh yeah, this is my jam. It's human body. And it's either, I didn't know if it was physio, if it was strength and conditioning, exercise physiology. I mean, there were all things on the table, but I knew I was going to be in this sort of healthcare sphere. And again, that comes down to, I just felt like I was maybe wired up to help in whatever way that was going to be. But certainly once I got around Dr. Thorne, there's no doubt. That's when I'm like, yeah, he just literally opened the door for me. And he must have seen something in me. Right? We gelled, and he liked the way I worked, thought, I was smart enough. And then he opened the doors, and so far I haven't screwed it up too bad that nobody's booted me out. Right. That's kind of the key. And the same with the Hockey Canada stuff, right? I got in on that level with Scott Salmon when he was doing more of the logistics and planning and everything. And now he's like a senior VP, and we've traveled around the world together, and I've obviously always done a good job and never pissed anybody off too much. And I think a lot of those things, I was thinking about this, it comes down to, because my first bunch of trips with Hockey Canada, I have bags. They tried to get me to sharpen skates once. I would do whatever. I'm putting on helmet visors. I would do anything, right? And I think that's the mentality you have to have. It's like the book Legacy, like never be too big to not do the little things, like sweep the floors. Doesn't matter, right? And that was the way that's the way I think I fit into that environment. Not because I purposely said, well, I better do this stuff. It was like, it had to be done. We were like ripping around small town Sweden trying to get a rink, and we're late. You just do what you got to do.
Part of the team.
Yeah, 100%.
You snuck one thing in, the no 5-year plan.
Yeah.
Always been like that? Has it always been just like, how do you articulate it? Do you like trust it based on what you're feeling and seeing?
Yeah. And I will say though, I'm getting to that age now where you start to say, well, how long am I going to work?
Right. Yeah.
How long am I going to do this? And it does force you to kind of say, when do I want to back off a little bit? So, but early on, there was really no, when I'm in med school, I'm like, well, let's just get through med school, and I could be a family doctor, and well, geez, the sports medicine stuff looks amazing, and well, geez, I'm doing this, and when I was working, so I did my first 14 years of sports coverage with the Roughnecks, the Hitmen, Hockey Canada. Did a little bit of the Calgary Cannons for a year before they left. Did national water polo. I just did anything and everything. But did I say I want to be the Flames doctor? No. In fact, talking to them, the guys that were doing it, I'll be like, I don't know if I want to do that. That sounds like a nightmare. But when that opportunity came around, it was 2015. I had a meeting with Brad Treliving and then Ken King after that. And I was, I was like, wow, it's kind of there's only 7 of these jobs in the country. So, and it's been amazing. It's been a great argument. I've had the headaches. We talked a little bit about what happened during COVID and all that stuff. First time that job ever really felt like work, like it was stressful, and it always does have its stressful times, but overall, like the pros are, I wouldn't do it if I wasn't happy. You know what I mean? It's really like, again, it's a privilege to have that job and to be led into that environment and to be able to get, the trust of the players, to make sure it's a fine line sometimes, to make sure you're doing what's right for them, regardless of all the external factors that are sometimes pretty potent.
Big business.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. If you break down the money per game, it gets a bit scary depending on the player. Yeah.
Thanks for doing this, dude.
Yeah. No, it's great. Like, it doesn't even, I think when we talked about this, I was like, I don't know if I don't talk about myself very much, right? Because I'm always asking people questions. So it's not something I'm used to. But when I listen to your podcasts, the one thing I would say, like, I do listen to a lot of podcasts, and I can know really quickly whether I will like it.
Yeah.
And it's whether I'm uncomfortable or comfortable with the delivery. Mm-hmm. And right away I was like, you're good. Like, you make the person listening to the podcast, and I think you make the person that's sitting in this chair feel super comfortable. Mm-hmm. And that opens things up. Like, it felt like a 5-minute conversation. So that's a credit to you.
Thank you.
Huge.
I obviously appreciate it. But it's like, everyone has a story.
Yeah.
And as cliche as that sounds, or as like basic as that sounds, the cool thing for me is the reason I'm so comfortable and for whatever reason this atmosphere works is because I'm like, when I'm on you with something, like either it's your mental fitness piece or like how you plan, because these are all things I'm like really interested in. So it's just like, all I'm doing is asking questions that I'm like, it's like self-learning through all these amazing people. Yeah. So it's a very, it's an experience.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Right. And so, I'm glad you said yes. I'm glad you made the time to do it, because you were on the list, you and Doc Thorne too.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
But it's just cool. It's cool. I remember sitting in Winsport, and I hadn't seen in a while, and sit down with you watching your son play, and you're like, how's it going? How's the podcast? I'm like, it's great. You got to come on it.
Yeah.
So it's like that moment I always remember having you here to actually hear the thing is a really cool experience for me.
No, for sure. We got to go out for a ride, and
dude, you're gonna have to drag
snowing
me.
Out there. It's snowing out there. Maybe we'll wait for May.
I'm gonna have to train all winter.
Oh no. I want to just do a spin.
Yeah. It'd be fun. I end the show with one question. When I say Calgary, where's your head go?
Yeah, it's interesting. My wife and I talked about that, and there's a lot of things it could be, but for us, it was opportunity for sure. When we moved out here in '99 for residency and went through the residency program, it was not in the plan. I think we weren't stuck on anything, but I think we thought we were going to head back, because I'm Victoria, she's Vancouver. But then when we got out of, residency and our doors kind of opened up, and then these sort of opportunities started dropping. And, even like 5 years down the road, like 2006, I'm like, Laura, where else can I do this? Like, this is incredible. It was just all the sports teams and all the opportunities that both of us had. And, we were talking earlier, like I think we're going to be the first husband and wife team to cover an Olympic Games, her with the women's team and me with the men's team. So it's been, and then there's so much more that's come from that, but opportunity was definitely the word that stuck. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, it's fascinating to listen to the story, right? It's just like door opens. You're like, there's a bunch of things that go with it. You got to be good at what you do. You got to be a good person. You got to present yourself properly and all those intangibles, but like they keep on opening.
Yeah. It's been good. I've been lucky.
Thanks for your time.
Pleasure.
I'm sure we'll talk sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Hopefully it's not you beating up your body.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'll be there. You got my number.
Yeah. I do.